So may I now invite the beacon of these troubled times to release the book. You know, there is an art to packing a book for a book release. May I invite His Holiness to speak and address us, please.
Dinde pepe kundre namdang chob nam sanglo lya semdu shadang mise dinde zagudi tolya pepe telya kushuayin.
Okay. I would like to offer my welcome to all of the guests and all of my friends who have come, and in particular I would like to thank you for coming to this event.
There's something there. That the any tab savage unjishar sur ring that tab savage ngumadi that hardest novels had the trotube sur the digita tabs chadi yore that is so the ending of the California this chebegi and Redlands University and Luju and go to Tiniba Yonche and Tizu the Nyamdo Pazuji Kashmir Drilling Cheshab and Nandundi and you told Pep Shabaruchi.
Now, this book that we are introducing this afternoon is like a continuation of my previous book, The Heart is Noble. And primarily, this is based on conversations that we had, or that I had with the students from the Redlands University in California, who came and had discussions. And so we have transcribed these and made the book.
That the Nandundi so the that Samegi can Debje, Jidangi, and then Namasangi Begi, Dakashura, Daji, Shuluni Sundeaji. And the Kashra Digita be Yondragi and Daji interconnectedness, some of the Digi Yondragi, Todu Chadiare, and Lava the Design to Julia Consigan which mature and the Blink has Calipese, any Dinjungi, Tawe Tonema, Kashre. Chikarada Chundena, the Sunshana, the Japangushi on the Yuvindusana, and the Samegi that the Dende that the Mabuchi saying you get some tango. Adri just an any younger the Susuki and the some Lebanon large Kasreda, Dinjung Sadlia, Koa Kandaji, you have a tongue, and Danaji Susu Soya Trelia Delia Nyamyon Kandishumba, that digi ma Deshe Japsha the Chadi order.
Now, the topic of this book, as you all know, is the topic of interconnectedness, which is such an important and well-known topic from Buddhist teachings. So this is a presentation of the view and practice of interconnectedness. As I'm sure you all know, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has traveled all over the world speaking about interdependence and giving teachings and talks about it, so I'm sure you have all heard of it. And so here, this book is a presentation of my own thoughts about it, as well as the understanding I have of interdependence, both in my experience, both my understanding as well as the experience that I've had in my life.
Philosophical viewpoint summer with that, and the Drugi Man Namsha Jibo Mahimba. Ding La Jugi, Unetine that Mizina Loleaji, Unetine Dinju Saji, Koa de Unsubeji, Mizina Lole, Koa learn to Bachitang. Jigone Migatung Yedenge, and Laber Gudenge, which the Digit Tonema, Jikare, Modric Chef to guard that catch of Chatiaji, the Tondi. Ringby do san, the Junzen Dene, Azu Tambo, Tinjung Gitarup Sheyon, Catulia, Banangazugi, Bezun Cariton Shabat Shubimina, Azunum Gun, Daji, Kyoya, Toloda, Antonia, Gisada, Tonya, did the Sanlo, and the Pinzuchili Dene, Kashuradaji, Mimangochida, Javachadiaji. Susuchibo. Sota me devici, Ganda Guyen, Chinagi Dende, Senada, Chunagi Guyen, Mabushivilia, Denguachi, Zuchadi, Hindustan, Tendiji, Gandaji, Kasre, Susu, Chuang, Nalolia, and the Dinjun Sadi, the Rujigo Maimba. That thing on it, Negi, living values, so much of Takana, the Digi in Devici, Misameji, Sonang, you had Shuna, some of the chicken money, Javar of the Digi, you want to do.
And so what my thought is, primarily, is that we not only see interdependence as a philosophical topic, something that we talk about in philosophy, but instead that it also be something that we can actually develop an understanding of within our own human lives, something that we can actually see with our eyes, something that we can feel with our hands, something that we can hear with our ears. And so I thought it was important for me to be able to give an introduction to how this. And so when first introducing the view of interdependence in the book, the first analogy or the first example I give of this is how do we view the clothes that we wear? How do we view what about the food that we eat or the things that we drink? These all come from, they're all dependent upon one another, and there are many different interconnected relations. It's not just a philosophical view. Basically what we're saying is that they all come from the interdependentness or the interconnectedness of many different causes and conditions. And this is something that I think we can actually experience within our own lives. And so we can see that interdependence is not just a philosophical topic, but instead it's a living value that we can uphold. And so my hope is that this is the understanding that everyone can take from the book.
That things are usually a misedo, Beneji, Tagia, net, Tindegi, that information error charge and Tagia net, Tindek as that Zamlin give them give pension, Chikili and Javi, Yondi, then I'll just say what you sent to order, Tagen Java then. That Yimbine, as you Jidangi, Chi numbers and Jidangi. 아주 저버직 차디 예비냐 수수기 셈은 나올로 되는지 저버 슈심부지 예데버디 초르투야디 게좀십 차려야지 아주 빈중 제바디 아주 스tam벨에 화가지 근데지가 다 제바 첨부지 예데버지 다 빈주지기지리야 되게 예버지 드네 주산다 인터넷 산한다도 간다 지 칠이야 가져다지 치기 아니 materials and to kandarji physical thone jaba chade de jibu mi bemba kanang an zugi nangsim ge thone pinsu jig jilia jin jaba chade ge yobdi shit to bi de sort to bi gwa di tan nen ga chi bi chade ya ji do chade yore something do dream bi ju sana and di jun san de ne de ya ji kajwe jig deng jaba sa di physical 로 직다 징외벽이 빈수직이 된 잡아 직보면 봐 아주 낭sem게 토네 빈수직을 지려야 지 간데스 제제 디도 그 소외 토는 잡아 용되게 여비지다 다나신 빈수직이 지려야 understand 간데시하고 여비 개첨이 여비지 가서 동요 알아 삼창도
And in particular, in these days, this is the age of the internet, it is the information era. And we can see this in the way that everyone in the world is becoming more connected with each other. We can see how this happens through information technology and the internet. But even though we have these internal and external connections, but really sometimes I think that it's difficult for us to feel like there's a strong connection internally with our minds. And it's important that we do feel such a connection. So we have to feel a strong connection of our thoughts with each other. And so I think this is what we need to call the internet. So it's not just the external physical connections, but it's also those alone are not enough. We also need to have a strong understanding or strong feeling for the internal mental connections that we have with each other. And I think that this is very important. And so I think that it's important to understand that we are connected with each other physically, and not only in terms of external things, but we need to feel the internal connection that we have with each other. And this is one of the main topics I'm trying to show in this book.
And that tamanguchu gwamepche da zoden dri da nge gab de dusane da nge khanma she de biche de dusane and da ji azu 기교 다 무릎세 도시 안다는 생각 저기 주면 담지지 안다는 생각 저기 Redland University professor Karen 도시 아래 고난 사매기 다지 그뒤장에 카르마 기시에 되지 다디두산에 조당 무릎세 마이규 안치 디젤이야 안다 담주에다 다나신 Karen 코나브니기 에너지 데브톨이야 이게 돌아와 봐 법치 도시 세나임브레 진주스탄에 다 되게 상황을야 도시 샤인다 망부징에 슈스게 신문도 안다 간다 다른 데미세 넘버 랭게스 두주 당시 대패 남들이야 미세 도시나 샤인
I haven't much else to say this afternoon. Basically, this book comes from oral talks that I gave. I spoke them orally, and they were translated by Ngurut Tsering. And then later, the Venerable Damche and Professor Karen Darras of the Redlands University then transcribed and edited these talks. So I gave oral talks, and Ngurut Tsering translated them, and then the Venerable Damche and Professor Darras made them into a book. And so I'd like to thank all of them very much for their help. Also, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to come to this event this afternoon.
echoing what His Holiness was saying, and I think he's being very understated about his achievement with the book. And it really is, as students of Buddhism, His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, as he reached out to the world beyond his primary role as a Buddhist leader, he coined the phrase universal responsibility. And it wasn't just being universally responsible and being responsible for each other and the planet, but as he said, that it was also being wise in the manner that it would help us. And I think that the enormous engagement that His Holiness the Karmapa has with the work has really deeply internalized Buddhist ideas and doctrine. And while the book has a number of references specifically to Buddhist phrases, ideas, and at some point, time permitting, and there's a question, what is the difference between interconnectedness, being connected, and interdependence, where we're also not just connected, but we are dependent on each other. And I think that the operative phrase really is interdependent, that, as he says in the book, that all of us want happiness and we want to avoid suffering, and we can only be happy if we in turn can spread happiness to other people. So it is that matrix of interdependency. And the other very emphatic underlying theme of the book that picks up from the idea of universal responsibility is the principle of altruism, that when you reach out to help other people, what does it do for you? He makes some references in the book to the engagements and the scientific research that has taken place around this theme, and that is when you think of other people, the sense of the I that suffers diminishes. So in many ways, the book is Buddhism, it's secular, it's accessible to a much larger community of people at a time when the particularity of faith is being challenged. And so the inclusiveness that this book embodies is a very major achievement in itself. I will start again. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, fellow travelers in the path, brothers and sisters. This is an iconic moment in many ways. I had the great privilege of doing perhaps the first interview with His Holiness the Karmapa after his arrival in India, a few years into that for television, and to be present at the book release of his previous publication. And it is an enormous sense of privilege and a blessing to have been able to, I'm twice his age, and despite the ignorance of years and the lack of wisdom, it has been a great privilege to watch and celebrate him and his continuing evolution. And we are gathered here today to celebrate and welcome his newest book, and you will hear a lot about the book. But I think what is particularly remarkable about it is that this is a major call to action. And while the timing of it may well have been accidental in terms of what has been unfolding on our planet in the last few months, particularly since the American presidential election and the vocabulary of America first, and we really have here a definitive articulation, both in terms of the techniques and strategies, so not merely a call for action, but a call and a plea for action and an articulation of how to act. And I think that is the real significance of the book, of His Holiness's presence, and our great opportunity and privilege to be here. I know that this gathering is already hugely familiar with His Holiness the Karmapa, his life and his work, but I think there are some new faces, so I will do the briefest of brief introductions, knowing in the old cliches that one is not really necessary. His Holiness is the head of a 900-year-old Karmapa Kagyu tradition, since his dramatic escape from Tibet to India in 2000 as a young boy. He has worked tirelessly both on himself and to continue his education and his evolution, and in terms of reaching out to the community. Amongst the first issues that he flagged as a young person was the issue of the environment, and has set up, I think it's called the Koryug Association that he has founded, that has brought the environmental education and environmental activism amongst the monasteries. He declared himself a vegetarian, and his monasteries are now vegetarian. He's taken a stand on women's and gender issues. And not as well known is that he is also an artist. He paints, he draws, calligraphy, writes poetry, and writes plays. He's just written a play on Milarepa, and performs music. And I was just asking him a short while ago that he autographed my book, and if you haven't seen it, it's really worth looking at. And it's like a remarkable piece of calligraphy. His signature is not, as far as I can tell, is not a piece of, a Tibetan lettering or Tibetan writing per se. I mean, I'm sure that in some senses it manifests and represents that. But right down to his signature, he has embodied this. He has interacted with large numbers of young people. And when you will read the introduction to the book, it will tell you that how this book evolved from sessions that he had with visiting largely American students. We at the Foundation for Universal Responsibility also organize a visit every summer for young Indian students who have also been privileged to spend time with His Holiness. I invite now to speak Mr. Ian Chapman, who is the publisher of the book, and he has promised that the book is going to do exceptionally well and that it will sell hugely, and I don't think he's going to have to work very hard to do that. I'm sorry, yeah. So Ian is the chief executive and publisher of Simon & Schuster, UK and international. And the company currently publishes 450 titles per year, of which 30% originate from his company. Some of the books he's done: Chronicles by Bob Dylan, no less; Wilson by Pulitzer Prize-winning author Scott Berg; Hard Choices by Hillary Clinton; and The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. And so that's as sort of big time a publisher as you can get for the kind of book that His Holiness has written. He's a graduate of Durham University and lives in East Sussex. Ian.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for the warmth of your welcome. I hesitate to use the word warmth, given that I'm kind of not used to the heat that we are currently experiencing in Delhi. But thank you for the warmth of your introduction, and to be a part of this very distinguished gathering and to share a stage with such distinguished guests. And it's a particular pleasure and privilege to share a platform with our guest of honor, His Holiness. I got into publishing 17 years ago, and the reason I was brought up in a publishing family, and my life has always been surrounded and about books and about a love of books, about the written word, and about authors. And so when I joined Simon Schuster 17 years ago, I had a vision. which was shared by the person who employed me in New York. And that vision was that the Simon & Schuster company in America, which was so successful, that it should spread its success and its wings to a global international market. And when I joined Simon & Schuster in the UK, it was not a great success. And for the last 17 years, we have been making some progress. And local publishing and some of the things and some of the books that I've had the great privilege of being involved in. And we've tried to spread this global message, because books are really significant and the written word is really significant, and it's really important to me that as long as you choose the right books, what I consider to be the right books, then it is our privilege and it is also our responsibility to get those books into as many people's hands as possible. So we moved from the UK and we moved to Australia, and 5 years ago we moved into India in terms of establishing Simon & Schuster India. And that has been a wonderful success story. And for the last 5 years, Raoul and his team, Raoul is the managing director of Simon & Schuster in India, have dedicated their lives with passion, hard work, and enormous commitment to making Simon & Schuster in India a part of this global vision that I conceived with my bosses in America 17 years ago. So it seems to me to be pretty fitting that here we are talking about a book called Interconnected. You know, everything in this book is of such significance. Obviously, there's been a reference already to Mr. Trump and to the US and to, in my mind anyway, the construction or putative construction of walls between countries, Mexico and so on. I come from the UK, where we are currently undergoing Brexit, and that, to me, is about the same things that are going on in America as well. It's about isolation, it's about segmentation, it's about intolerance, and sometimes, actually, it creates fear. And this, for me, in terms of this book, it seems to me to be such an important and significant message that there is a global need, for me anyway, as a human being, as a professional, but as a human being, as a father, as a son, as a husband. There is a responsibility, I believe, that this should be an age of love and of respect. So for us, this book comes at an apposite time, at a very important time. And yes, we're going to sell some copies. I promise you that. We're going to sell some copies because it's too important that we don't. The book is structured into 3 parts: seeing the connection, feeling the connection, and living the connection. I love that. It's practical. It's practicalities. Let's make a difference. Let's have a plan. Let's execute. Let's review. Let's try and make a difference. And there is so much in the book. There is so much that I could quote, but I'm not going to, because you're going to go and buy the book, and then you'll read it yourselves. But there is one particular sentence that resonated very much with me, and this was the sentence: to think about our life in a way that treats it as our individual property is too limited and too small, and leads us to miss seeing its full value. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing that His Holiness has expressed. So I will conclude by saying that this is the first book that we are doing with our friends at Wisdom, based in America. Our American publishing Simon & Schuster counterparts already have an arrangement with Wisdom, and this is the next part of that global arrangement with Wisdom. And how appealing and how wonderful that the first book that we are publishing with Wisdom should be interconnected by His Holiness. And thank you very much for inviting me and for being part of this. It's a great honor and it's a great privilege. Thank you very much.
We have a message from Mr. Jairam Ramesh, who was to be the keynote speaker, but was at the last minute unable to be here. I deeply regret that a last-minute family commitment in Chennai has kept me away from the launch of this beautifully written and extremely thought-provoking book. I felt privileged that the charismatic Ogyen Trinley Dorje had invited me, and I was very much looking forward to be at the function. His Holiness the Karmapa has rediscovered for us the modern meaning of the Buddha's personality and the contemporary significance of his life and messages. He distills the essence of the Buddha and presents a practical guide for enriching our lives, which are interconnected in so many different ways. He draws from his personal experience, which is in itself a valuable repository of his youth notwithstanding. He writes engagingly in a manner that is at once simple and direct as much as it is powerful. This book would be relevant at any time, but it is even more so at a time when social conflicts have become endemic, when religious prejudices and bigotry are wreaking havoc, and as nature's delicate ecological balance gets increasingly disturbed with disastrous consequences. All I can do is salute him on this achievement and express the hope that he will continue to be a beacon in these troubled times. I next call upon Mirai Chatterjee. She is the director of the Social Security team at the Self-Employed Women's Association, the very, very iconic organization Seva, which was founded by and led by Ila Bhatt for many years, and Mirai has been much more than a worthy successor and inheritor of that rich tradition. She is responsible for Seva's healthcare, childcare, and insurance programs. She's currently chairperson of the National Insurance Vimo Seva Cooperative Limited and actively involved with the Lok Swasthya Health Cooperative, of which she is a founder. Both cooperatives are promoted by Seva, and she joined Seva in 1984 and was its general secretary, as I mentioned, after Ilaji. She serves on the boards of several organizations, including the Public Health Foundation of India, in a little trouble with the government, like many of us, Save the Children, and Pradhan. She was conferred the Global Achievement Award by the School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins University. She has a bachelor's from Harvard in History and Science and a master's from Johns Hopkins University School of Public Health. I invite Meera to speak.
Thank you very much, and special thank you to Your Holiness for this great honor and blessing to be able to be here and share some ideas at the launch of Interconnected. The ideas, for those of us who've read the book, are so simply, clearly, and beautifully explained. There's so much to say. It needs serious reflection, reading, and rereading. But a lot of the ideas struck a common chord. As I was reading, I was almost aloud saying, absolutely, that's it. And it struck a common chord with what we are trying to do in a small way in Seva. I must say it also struck a common chord with me personally, because I've always felt close to Buddhist action and thought, and particularly Tibetan Buddhism. The one idea that resonated a lot with Seva and what we're trying to do is the idea of equality of all human beings. In fact, equality is the essence. Equality, interconnectedness, inclusiveness, sharing, empathy. These are the essence of what we have been trying to do in the Seva movement for the last 4 decades. Building solidarity, the sisterhood, and as I said, empathy for compassionate collective action, in a small way trying to work on some of the ideas that Interconnected shows us. I think these ideas are very important, as Rajiv has also said, because we live in difficult times. We see growing inequality, growing gaps between rich and poor, men and women, communities. So it's very important that these ideas, as have been brought out so beautifully by His Holiness, are read by all, are spread among young, old, all ages and all parts of our country and our world. Another aspect of the book that really touched a common chord was the faith in the inner potential of all human beings. This is something we've had the privilege of seeing over the last 45 years, that people who are forgotten and perhaps sometimes even in despair, we watch them just grow and bloom when they are connected with others and when we all hold hands and walk together. And I'd like to share one example of one such sister of mine. Her name is Chanchi Ben. She's a poor landless laborer from a drought-prone village in Gujarat, the state where the Seva movement began. And when we went to her village, she was full of despair and hopelessness. And once she became Seva's health worker, people in the village were shocked because they said, here is this girl from this community. What does she know? She never even went to school. And on top of it, she's disabled. And the upper castes were up in arms. And now, 30 years later, the entire village has asked her and elected her as Sarpanch of the village. And some time ago, she was asked to be keynote speaker at a big meeting of corporate honchos in Mumbai. And as she spoke to them, something amazing happened. It was sort of empathy in action. All these presidents of big corporations stood up, gave her a standing ovation, and had tears rolling down their cheeks. So, connection and empathy in action. We have seen thousands of such Chanchi Bens over the years, fortunately, in the Seva movement. The second point that really struck a chord was the issue of diversity, and that has already been referred to. We are blessed that we live in a land with so much diversity. Now we have to preserve, protect, and promote that diversity at all costs. Wherever there are challenges, we should stand together with courage and protect this great gift that we have in India and, of course, in many other countries. I'm coming directly from our annual general meeting, which was held yesterday in Indore, and 700 grassroots women leaders from 14 states of the country came together. We had sisters from Kashmir, from Kerala, from Nagaland, and from Gujarat, and all the states in between, so many states in between. And there was diversity in action. It was there, and I was thinking, if this country's diversity and peaceful change is to be promoted, it's these kind of women who should be in the lead. And there they were, sharing, celebrating collective action together, celebrating diversity. Many times no one could understand each other, all different languages, good fun. And also ability to act collectively. Also praying together, which is important, what Gandhiji taught us many years ago, and we begin our day with Sarvadharam prayer. So there were 700 women praying together, remembering all our world's great religions, Holy Quran, Buddhism, so many. And these are all small steps, no doubt, but I think these small steps slowly will lead to significant and maybe even big changes. The third thing that really struck a common chord and has already been referred to is the importance of tending to our inner world with care. Your Holiness, you reminded us that this is so important. The inner conditions and the outer conditions are so interlinked, so interconnected, and we need to pay attention to both. And I think sometimes, personally, people like myself and others involved in civil society, we forget this. We are so much focused on the outer conditions, outer world, that perhaps we don't pay enough attention to the inner world at a cost to ourselves and, of course, to other people. So thank you, Your Holiness, for reminding us. Finally, His Holiness reminds us of our deep connection to the land, to Mother Earth, and to our planet. Most of India's farmers are women. They don't need to be reminded about this. In fact, it's us, others of us, who need to go to them and listen and learn and reclaim that tradition, that history and heritage. They call for an economy of nurturance. They live an economy of nurturance. They preserve, protect, and promote our land and our forest. And of course, they grow all our food. We need to learn and reconnect with them and with so many others, as His Holiness has urged us to do so well and so evocatively in the book. Our own small offering to this debate and discussion is what our founder, Ilaben Bhatt, calls the 100-mile idea. If we can produce and consume within a 100-mile radius, and she has identified from our long years of experience 6 things that have to be done locally for a sustainable, just, and peaceful world. Roti, kapda, makan, to be produced and consumed locally. And then, of course, primary health care, primary education, and primary financial services. And maybe if we are able to do this, and I don't think it's too idealistic, because these are some of the same ideas that His Holiness is also sharing with us in his book, then perhaps we'll have a more just, equal, and interconnected world. So to end, thank you for the gift of this book, Your Holiness. I promise that as best as I can, I'll try to take some of these ideas forward. Thank you very much.
I invite Karen Derris, who was the protagonist in helping create the conversation that yielded this book. Karen earned a PhD in religious studies from Harvard University. She is professor of religious studies at the University of Redlands in California, where she teaches courses in Buddhist traditions and world religions. Professor Derris was named Virginia C. Hunsaker Distinguished Teaching Chair in 2011, and her research focuses on the intersection of literature, ethics, and history in Buddhist traditions. She collaborated with Venerable Dr. Damcho Diana Finnegan to organize the dialogue between His Holiness the Karmapa and her students, and together they edited the follow-up books, The Heart is Noble and Interconnectedness. Karen.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here with all of you. I'd like to begin by expressing my boundless gratitude to His Holiness Karmapa for the opportunity to learn from you and to participate in the process of sharing your teachings to my students from the University of Redlands with a worldwide audience through Interconnected and your earlier book, The Heart is Noble. The impact your teachings had on my students and also on myself was immediate and visible. I could see and feel my students' minds broadening and their hearts expanding as they took in the powerful new perspective that they encountered from His Holiness's teachings of being an interdependent individual. This was a challenging intellectual and emotional lens from which to view themselves and their place in the world as students who had been raised in the worldview of the modern West that emphasizes the rights and freedoms of autonomous individuals. Through hearing His Holiness's powerful and heartfelt responses to their questions, my students came to see that embracing their interdependence enhanced who they were as individuals. Being interdependent and an individual need not be an either-or proposition. Rather, it is a both-and view that is consistent with reality. They began to see the possibilities that His Holiness Karmapa offered them, to see the greater freedoms and opportunities to compassionately change themselves and the world through the boundless possibilities of being interdependent individuals. As His Holiness Karmapa shared with the students, intellectually understanding our interdependence must be joined by feeling those interconnections, as he had spoken about so beautifully today, that we need to learn directly, especially through our senses, in order to live their interdependence, through seeing interdependence, through hearing interdependence, through feeling it in their embodied selves. And receiving these teachings so powerfully from His Holiness helped my students to understand the request that I had made of them, that while for the entirety of their time spent in India, that they would live according to the Buddhist 5 precepts. And 2 of the most important perspectives they gained was the fulfillment of the precept of protecting life by voluntarily keeping a vegetarian diet for the period of their studies. And many of them, now many years later, have continued this as a life choice for themselves. Likewise, they began to think expansively about the precept of not taking what is not given, by actively reflecting upon the resources they used while they stayed in the small village of Sidhpur. They quickly came to see that their own patterns of consumption, particularly of the plastic packaging of the snacks that they purchased, would generate garbage in the village that wouldn't just disappear on a daily basis as it does on our university campus. Perhaps most profoundly for a university group, the students came to see that education need not, nor should not be for one's individual gains and for one's own future prosperity. Inspired by His Holiness Karmapa's brilliance as a deeply responsive thinker, we practiced learning as a collective enterprise that can be, and indeed must be in service of others. And I think for myself as an educator, this has been one of the most powerful lessons and transformations for me, to see that education is really not for the self, but it is the responsibility that will create the opportunities of how we can be of service to others in the world. As so many of these esteemed speakers have said, while the teachings that form the basis of this book originated in 2013, I think we have seen that this book is being shared with the world at a very crucial moment. We may say that it waited until the moment when it is so desperately needed. As His Holiness shows us, a global society based upon the globalization mechanisms of competition and consumption is unsustainable and all too easily leads to divisive fear. We must learn to see our interconnectedness through lenses that enable us to embrace our differences and distinctiveness while staying always rooted in our shared human equality. I am forever grateful for the opportunity to experience the possibilities of global friendship that His Holiness Karmapa describes as a lens for living interdependence. And this global friendship that His Holiness Karmapa has extended to myself and the whole University of Redlands community has profoundly changed us. We are so grateful that you honored us with your visit during your tour of universities in the United States in 2015, and your acceptance of the honorary degree of Doctorate in Humane Letters from the University of Redlands. Your presence is still felt on our campus. From the laurel tree that you helped to plant that grows beautifully now, and where people gather every week on Monday afternoons to hold a peace vigil. You are remembered so fondly by the students who traveled with me to to study with you at Gyuto and who returned from across the United States to visit with His Holiness when he visited their alma mater. Your teachings continue to guide these students as they are finding ways to serve the world. And I firmly believe that your teachings will surely guide all of the readers of your beautiful book. Forever, thank you.
Amongst the many achievements of the book, a very touching moment in the book is when His Holiness says that when people call him His Holiness, he wants to say, look, hold on, call me His Loneliness. It's actually much more. I think the significance of that is much more than a casual statement that we can smile at, because it has a very profound resonance and I think gives the impetus that drives his intellect to merge with the feeling of isolation that his exile in India has brought with it. And I think that because the book is not merely an academic exercise, which means talking about interdependence and interconnectedness, as someone who studied Buddhism and has looked at the world around him and has used the filter of Buddhism to interpret and understand it. But I think the book, and that's why it talks about the inner network, it talks about feeling. Why does it talk about feeling? It talks about feeling as an extension of that sense of isolation. And I think that great writing often emerges when it juxtaposes deeply felt personal experience with a larger wisdom that it draws upon. And I think this book will go down in history as a remarkable achievement of that juxtaposition. It tells us as much about His Holiness the Karmapa as it does about the larger universe. And not merely from the position of teaching as a teacher, but as what drives him and moves him personally as his quest. And this is something that we in India, His Holiness the Dalai Lama often says that, we Tibetans are the chelas and you are the gurus, and students such as me and many of my friends here, Renuka, Kabir. I see so many familiar faces here. Our response is that really today the situation is reversed. It is the other way around. We are the chelas and our Tibetan masters are the teachers. And the other great teaching from this book, which sort of emerges from its subtext rather than an in-your-face articulation, and it's attempting to do this in a secular manner so that it remains secular, and that is the moving from an intellectual understanding to what we sort of struggling aspirants like me call realization. And it is when understanding transforms us into a realization that our deepest reflexive responses are impacted. So, it is really approaching, if you look at the dialectic of the book, His Holiness the Dalai Lama often talks about, the Nalanda tradition. What is the Nalanda tradition? The Nalanda tradition is contrarian to the Western liberal tradition of education, which really looks at reality, looks at any issue from a position of questioning skepticism. What the book follows in terms of its argument and logic is to approach a fact from diverse perspectives to arrive at and reinforce your particular perspective. I say this because this book is not merely to be read for knowledge and assimilated for information. It is a textbook that can be used for realization. And some of the exercises are drawn not in a formal sense from Buddhist traditions, like exchanging oneself for others. I know that the audience here has a predominant Buddhist orientation, but for those of you who may not, this is a very simple exercise where you visualize your mother, and in His Holiness talks about mother's love, and you feel the emotion associated with mother's love, and then you replace that with somebody, a neutral figure, and experience that feeling associatively with the neutral person than with your enemy. And I remember one of the most, and here I talk about the larger issue of Tibetan teachers and the Tibetan approach to Buddhism. I remember in the 80s when I went up to Dharamsala that I was so very moved because the monks on their prayer mats said, "Pray for the Chinese." The prayer ceremonies started with, "May the veils of ignorance lift from the Chinese." So this is a deeply felt book, and it doesn't merely talk about cultivating the feeling of interdependence as an intellectual exercise, but again, the Tibetan tradition has sutra, and tantra is not obviously what is commonly associated with the word tantra, but sutra is knowledge, and tantra is the emotion, the feeling that we can evoke, and the juxtaposition of that is what brings out realization. So we're very deeply grateful, Your Holiness, for this remarkable book that extends the boundaries of our approach, particularly in a secular context, from its Buddhist origins, to the practice and understanding that will lead to a more inclusive world. So on behalf of all of us and those who haven't read the book, in anticipation, deep gratitude and deep celebration. Thank you very much. I think that is it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here.